Okay, Ryan, I'm going to give you my responses to the 5 questions, and what I'll do is answer the questions, and then I'll leave some space so that you can use it for editing purposes or however it is you're going to stage all of this. And I won't read the question, obviously, I'll just say the number of the question. Okay, I think I'm ready to go, and all right, here we go. Question 1. Hi, I'm Leslie Poole, council member for District 7. Since being elected 6 years ago, I've fought hard for District 7 and all of Austin. I'm running for re-election because the work is not yet done, and especially at this critical moment. From the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic devastation, to police brutality and deep-rooted racial inequities, to the urgency of the climate crisis, to affordability and rewriting the land development code, the challenges we face are massive, complex, and immediate. During these extraordinary times, our city needs leaders who are ready to face these challenges with the experience, knowledge, and skill to lead our community through the difficult months and years ahead. I have a proven record of strong leadership on progressive initiatives, and government accountability and building strong communities are my core values. My record of civic participation and engagement is pretty extensive. There is a lot to read about me at my campaign site, which is lesliepoolcampaign.com, or my election Facebook page, Re-elect Leslie Poole, and I also have a personal and a professional Facebook page too, my City Council Facebook page. There's a lot of good information on that page, things that are going on in the community and at City Hall. I think what you're most interested in, though, is my record, what I've done while on council. Here's a quick overview of my legislative record from the last 6 years. The majority of my work circles around resilience for our community. So that would be environmental livability, sustainability, and equity, things like flood mitigation, stewardship of our water resources, improving standards for clean air and water, and expanding the city's open space and green space. In transportation, I've worked for and advocated for better transit options and safer streets, especially safe routes to schools and ADA compliant sidewalks, and also am supporting and voted for Project Connect and the $400 million bonds for trails and open space and sidewalks. That's the Proposition B. Also, open government and accountability, increasing government transparency through public engagement, and ethics, campaign finance, and lobby reform, which increase government accountability and also increases the engagement and trust of Austin residents in their government. Okay, so question 2. I agree that climate change is an existential and a global threat to the world. All who live here are at risk. Our ecosystems are at risk. That's a threat I've recognized and lived with since the very first Earth Day in 1970. I've lived my life in a way that keeps my carbon footprint very small, and have been an early adopter of many eco-centric practices that are now well accepted. Things like backyard composting, having a big old 600-gallon water tank to capture the rain off my roof, and planting native flowers, wildflower gardens. And Will and I sometimes even eat the tomatoes from our raised garden beds when we can beat the squirrels to them. As a council member, I've been able to turn my civic involvement and professional expertise, I worked for years for the National Wildlife Federation, into formal legislation and law for the city. Quick rundown of significant environmental legislation I've led on as a council member: the updates to Austin Energy's Energy Resource Generation and Climate Protection Plan in 2015 and 17, the Community Climate Plan that I brought and passed in 2017, Austin's Climate Protection Plan and Green New Deal in 2019, Austin's Community Resilience Plan in 2020. I led the opposition on the dais to the Kinder Morgan Permian Highway Pipeline, and passed the legislation that authorized the city to join in the class action suit against Kinder Morgan. And I commissioned a feasibility study on biomethane and the measures that the Texas Gas Service can take to reduce natural gas leaks. And then one other thing, I voted against Oak Hill Flyover being built by TxDOT, and that was challenged by area residents. It's way too much concrete. And oddly enough, there were only 2 of us who voted against that project on the dais. It was me and Councilmember Kassar. I was very surprised. I thought more people, especially those on the dais who talked about wanting to reduce or eliminate the number of traffic lanes, dependence on cars, and concrete, would have voted against it. But it was just me and Greg. So as you can see, climate impacts and the environment are a chief platform playing for me. I am one of the leaders on this council fighting against climate change. Okay, I'll go to question number 3 now. I agree with most in Austin that the LDC should be updated, and I support doing it in alignment with Imagine Austin, which is the city's comprehensive plan. I support density and mixed use along corridors, which provides for more foot traffic, more small business opportunity, and overall increased commerce and space availability for retail, business, and creatives. The transition areas that were discussed during Code Next and LDC rewrite were exceedingly problematic, and I did not support how the staff was imposing them without residents' agreement. The adoption process was also being done in violation of Texas statutes, despite clear evidence and rhetoric pointing this out to the city legal staff. And as Judge Seufer ruled in March in the lawsuit, Acuna versus City of Austin. I do think the issue has been unnecessarily divisive. I think any amendments to the LDC must have the support of the community. Property rights are paramount in Texas, and those rights extend to the uses and zoning of land that Austin residents own. Government should serve its residents, not the other way around. We need to liberalize land regulation laws to the benefit of Texas municipalities. The legislature outlawed inclusionary zoning in 2005 to prevent Austin and other cities from requiring developers to provide housing, affordable housing for low-income residents in order to get specific zoning or permits for market rate housing. In the run-up to the 86th legislative session, I worked with Representative Gina Hinojosa to file a bill to overturn the ban. That was the Todd Baxter bill that prohibited inclusionary zoning. The city's official legislative agenda includes this issue in the 87th legislature. I hope to pass it in 2021. If we can't do it then, if Representative Hinojosa can't do it and the Travis County delegation can't do it then I will work with her in 2023 and try one more time. It's ridiculous that the state of Texas should restrict the city of Austin through punitive legislation and preemption, and that has to change. But if we want affordable housing in Austin, we have to change the state law in order to give us the tools that really make that possible. Okay, so question number 4. I read an article recently that has a lot of insight into the phenomenon of gentrification. Interestingly, it was about restaurants that opened in low-income areas and how complicit they've been in gentrifying. It was a primer on how not to gentrify. Changes to policies that favor new developments over existing investment in community, established community. That's the only way to meaningfully curb gentrification. And so the article that I would commend to you, it's called "What is an Anti-Gentrification Restaurant?" It was written by Monica Burton. It's in Eater, Austin, early in, I think it was the first part of maybe a month ago, early September. So let me read you just a little excerpt to kind of focus this conversation. She wrote, "Gentrification is the process by which more affluent people and businesses move into a neighborhood, effectively changing the character of that neighborhood by creating a rent gap between existing land values and potential ones." Back in 1976, the Urban Land Institute described gentrifiers as those who would establish a new investment climate in an area. Well, that's exactly what's been going on in Austin in a very big way over the last 20 years. The change can take place over decades, and while the technical definition of gentrification doesn't include race, gentrification in the United States, by and large, affects Black and Latinx communities who are displaced by wealthier white people. The pattern repeats itself in neighborhoods in nearly every city: Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights in New York, Boyle Heights in Los Angeles, the old Fourth Ward in Atlanta, West Philadelphia, and so on. It's like what's been going on in Austin for at least the last 2 decades. Intact minority neighborhoods on the Near East Side of Austin have been all but erased by the intense real estate development. We know it's happening. It's been happening, and while it seems to be impossible to stop it, now communities of color are uniting and standing together to call attention to the loss of their neighborhoods and to call on the city council to help stop the displacement and the further gentrification. Well, I stand with these communities of color in their fights to save their neighborhoods. I commissioned the UT study, Uprooted, to explore the intersection the question relates to. And yes, those who are less economically secure have lost their homes and their communities because of Austin City Council zoning decisions over the last half century and more. I support neighborhoods retaining their cohesiveness. And that is why when neighbors join in protesting zoning changes, I put great value and weight on their positions, and I respect their input. Okay, last question, question 5. The changes I proposed and led on with the police budget, along with several of my colleagues, is one of the ways in which we demonstrate our priorities. I listened to my constituents and worked with advocates from criminal justice and policing groups on many aspects of my proposal. I'm proud to serve on a council that took such a strong stand together to address police brutality and systemic racism in policing. Some of the more tangible changes I proposed were diverting mental health emergency calls to trained mental health professionals through new investments in EMS and with a contract with Integral Care, adding $6.5 million to house the homeless, and increasing the funding for victim services. We need to stop asking our police officers to handle social service needs. And most importantly, we need to hold them accountable and responsible for improving community relationships. They should be guardians, not warriors. Community spoke this summer. We spoke with a loud voice, and we listened. I'm optimistic about this reimagining conversation and the audit of APD that's underway and the changes to the cadet curriculum and the training at the academy. I am committed to more changes too as we proceed. But now we need folks to stay engaged as we move into a public review of the many functions at APD over the coming weeks and months to find opportunities for more efficiency and a more equitable vision of community safety. And that's where AYD leadership and the leaders in AYD and the members come in. Your leadership in our community is really needed. And I hope you will get involved and stay involved in the work that we're doing to reimagine public safety. Well, thanks for taking the time to listen to me. It's kind of late, and I've had a long day too, really, really busy this time of year. But I'm really grateful to have an opportunity to talk with you all and to thank you for the work you do in our community. We all love this city a whole lot. I have been honored to be endorsed by Austin Young Democrats in my past campaigns, and I thank you for that. Very appreciative, and I would ask for your endorsement going forward. This is my last campaign for council. I have one more 4-year term ahead, and hope to represent you, those of you who are specifically in District 7, but it doesn't matter if you live in my district. I'm here for you, I'm a voice for you, and I thank you again for the time that you're giving to this race tonight. Thanks a lot, and see you at the polls. Early voting starts October 13, and Election Day, as you all know, is November 3rd. Have a good evening. Thanks.